Hello, everyone. Really excited to be here. This is, in fact, my 7th or 8th time in Amsterdam. But I want to get into the talk quick, because it was really late until I realized I only have 20 minutes, and I have like 40 slides or something. So I'm going to try to go quick, otherwise I won't be able to finish in time. But this talk is about a 10-year retrospective into the 10 years of work in open source. So, about me, I'm an independent open source developer, and I've been independent since 2016, so that's a bit over 8 years, but my first foray into open source was releasing Vue.js back in 2014. So this year marks a 10-year of working on open source and just building in the open. I'm now based in Singapore and work full-time on Vue, Vite, and a bunch of other related open source projects. And before going full-time, I briefly worked at Google and then at a startup called Meteor.js. So that's enough about me. Things I work on two things, mostly. One is Vue, which is a front-end JavaScript framework created in 2014. How many of you have heard about it? Woo! Thank you. And the other tool is a front-end build tool called Vite. How many of you are using Vite? Wow, OK, great. So Vite was created in 2020, about 4 years ago. So, so let's talk about Vue first. It's a 10-year-old project. It took a long time to get there. But if we take a brief snapshot of Vue today, we have two repositories on GitHub, so one for Vue 2 and one for Vue 3. Combine these two repositories, we have over 9,000 commits, 500 plus releases, 250,000 plus GitHub stars, 5 million weekly NPM downloads, and 2.2 million users worldwide. This is statistics from our DevTool extension. And it has over 1 billion plus monthly CDN requests on JS Deliver. So so every year I kind of look at these numbers and kind of marvel at the scale of Vue has grown into. And I think it's probably, people have asked me the same question so many times. It's like, did you expect this to happen when you first started working on Vue? And the obvious answer is no. I had no idea what it's going to be like. Had no expectations whatsoever, even when I decided I want to start working on it full time. So it is a pretty amazing journey. But let's take a step back and think about, talk a bit about the early days. So I won't dig into too much of the small stories of how it all started, why I got the idea. But the humble beginning in the early phases, when I first launched Vue in 2014, February 2014, the result was I got a few hundred GitHub stars, and I was over the moon about it. I was really excited. But that was just the beginning, so the excitement really didn't last that long, to be honest. But let's take a look at the brief timeline. So first release with the name Vue.js was actually in 2013. That was, it was private. I just only put it on NPM, but didn't tell anyone. So the first public announcement is February 2014. It reached 1.0 in October 2015, 2.0 in 2016, 3.0 started in September 2018, and soft launch September 2020. 3.0 finally became the default in January 2020. And December 2023, we finally declared Vue 2 to be end of life. So that's a very, very quick overview, right? But I don't really want to spend this talk talking about like all the little changes that happen over time about Vue, because I want this talk to be more about the journey, the feeling, you know, the sort of how things have changed for me over the course of working on a project that grew beyond my expectations, right? So there were a lot of ups and downs. A very obvious thing, if you dig into my GitHub profile and see there is a graph here. So that's February 2014 when I first released Vue. And there were quite a few months right after that I didn't write any code on GitHub at all because I was quite burned out, right? So this happens quite a lot. How many of you here maintain an open source project? OK, not a lot of you. But if you've maintained an open source project over time, you probably experienced some form of burnout, right? Because the expectation that open source users place on you, especially when you have a project that's grown bigger than you expected is tremendous, right? So I like to make an analogy to this technology adoption cycle that many of you have probably seen. Usually when new technology comes out, there's this peak of inflated expectations. And then it just falls hard into this disillusionment phase where you're like, this is crap. And then you need to kind of just like get across that chasm to be able to go back to the slope of enlightenment and plateau of productivity at the end. So I make an analogy of that to open source involvement. When you get into open source, and this is personally for me, when I first got into open source, there is a peak of excitement and output. I was like, wow, my thing is getting attention on Hacker News. It's getting GitHub stars. It's all these people using my software. And I'm trying to answer every single issue on GitHub, trying to fix every single bug. And then, as your user base starts to grow, more flaws gets revealed in the thing you thought that was perfect. And you realize, okay, maybe I could improve here. Maybe I could improve there. Oh, wait, this other project has been doing this all this time, which I never thought about. Oh, I should maybe just close this project and ask people to use the other thing, right? So there is very common for open source developers to go through this phase of burnout and self-doubt. And it's the same for me. And there have been multiple times that I have been going through this kind of thinking whether I should continue working on this. Does it even make sense? Is it still worthy of pursuing putting in all the time? And just the sheer amount of pressure you get every day you wake up, you get like 20 issues of people finding your software just does not work. That's tough, okay? So over time, I've learned to readjust. Over time, I've learned to just find peace with myself and acknowledging that things cannot be perfect. And I think for most open source projects and for most open source maintainers, there is this process of once you get into this sort of burnout phase, a lot of them just never get out of it. They just stop there. They abandon the project. And that's why we see all the churn of like different solutions coming up and go, right? But if you can get past that chasm and you find peace with yourself and you're like, you find a good balance of understanding your responsibility and the limit of your capabilities and drawing a good line between how much you want to put into your projects and how much you want to get out of your life, right? You need to find that balance to be able to keep working on open source productively. And that is not an easy thing to do, right? So this is when I first released Vue, and there are multiple other phases in my career where I just stopped writing code for a few months. I'm like, I'm done with this. I don't want to do it anymore. But then I come back, eventually, right? So even today, sometimes, like I pulled the whole graph of like all the way from 2014 to 2022, and there are just multiple life events, right? Like open source maintainers also have all these things going on in life, having babies, moving to new places, having COVID, So my whole point here is when people think about someone who's like me, who's been working in open source for 10 years, it's not always smooth sailing. We have to just like go through a lot of challenges and just finding what is meaningful to us to keep ourselves motivated in working on these things. So and my hope is when you're using an open source project, not necessarily from me, but from any other person who've kindly share their work with you for free. Think about what they have gone through in the time that you don't see, the effort they put into it, maybe the burnouts they've struggled through, and just appreciate it a bit more. And think about giving back. Think about supporting them. Think about contributing, helping them fix issues, or donating, sponsoring them. So many ways you can help. And for me personally, a lot of the struggle come from also handling the growing scope of the projects, right? Vue as a framework, you started as a very simple script that you can include via a script tag on a page and it'll just work. But over time, the scope just expanded so much. Outside of Vue core, we also have the documentation, which we have like hundreds of pages of all these detailed information, right? And need to be kept up to date. We have the official router, we have official state management libraries, we have the build tool chain, which somehow I ended up building a build tool myself because I wanted to improve Vue's tool chain. And then there's IDE support, Volar, which is trying to get all the TypeScript and CSS embedded languages working nicely in Vue single file components. It's very complicated. It's a lot of work. And then there's the browser dev tools. And we need to keep the whole ecosystem in sync. When we did with Vue 3, it took us 2 years to get all these things up to date with Vue 3. So handling the growing scope was extremely challenging. And then we also need to deal with a lot of tough decisions, right? The Vue 2 to Vue 3 transition, if you are a Vue user, you probably know it was not smooth. There were lots of mistakes made and lots of lessons learned. And we also had pretty much reinvented the framework with Composition API, right? Which opened up a new paradigm, but also created fragmentation. Some Vue users still prefer the old APIs. And we have to go through very lengthy discussions in RFCs and debates, trying to convince people that this is actually a good thing that can help you in certain ways. So a realization eventually that I got from all these struggles is that I'm just one person. I can't write all the code. I can't answer all your questions. I cannot fix all your bugs. And that is fine, because the project is no longer just me. It's a community, right? So I'll be like Steve Ballmer and just repeat this as many times as I want, because this is just so important, because this is what made Vue possible, right? You see, I struggle as a single person, but we pulled it through because it's not just me. It's a whole team. It's a whole community, right? So Vue wouldn't have been where it is today without the people around it, right? That's why we say open source is about people. So here's my deepest gratitude to our team members, contributors, ecosystem library maintainers, sponsors, conference meetup organizers, community partners, advocates, all these people, not just contributing in forms of code, but just contributing in making people connect around the project and helping it improve in every aspect possible, right? And in the same time, my role kind of started to transition from just writing code. Sometimes I do wish I could just focus on writing code, but nowadays, there's just a lot of work outside of code that's about mentoring people in the ecosystem, helping team members grow into bigger roles. Technical direction, just trying to making sure all these projects are moving cohesively. Community management, pretty much tweeting. Sponsor relationships. We actually had to make the project sustainable, and that's a part about Vue that I'm pretty proud of. And then there are commercial partnerships. There are companies building on top of Vue, building in the Vue ecosystem, and they want to collaborate and give back to Vue. And so all these kind of relationships that we have to manage just outside of work. So it's kind of like a full-time project management outside of just writing code. So something I'm really proud of is we actually distribute a very fair amount of money to Vue and Vite contributors in our ecosystems. Every year, we actually distribute more than 270,000 US dollars to our contributors in the ecosystem. Plus, full position and sponsorships our contributors receive due to involvement in the projects. Sometimes we would, some contributors, for example, to Vue or Vite would land a job because a company wants to hire a core contributor or want them to keep working on these open source projects. So opportunities created. And on the technical front, just want to mention a few things. Despite being a 10-year-old framework, we are still shipping very significant internal improvements. We just recently had a 2x faster rewritten parser. We had 3.x improvements in SSR benchmarks. And we had a new upcoming release in 3.5 that reduces the reactivity system memory usage by 56% and improves dealing with large reactive arrays by up to 10 times. So we're still well alive and shipping very significant internal changes. And then there are more ambitious stuff going on, like Vapor Mode. This is a solid-inspired compilation strategy that takes the same Vue component syntax and just outputs something that's more performant. Currently, it's still work in progress, but we're almost done with the components, and next stage is really trying to be able to allow users to embed Vapor components in today's Vue applications. We also have a new DevTools that's coming up that just have better UX, more features, more performant and smoother. And another thing I want to mention about the Vue ecosystem is a very collaborative mindset. The Vue community has been the source of multiple efforts that benefited the entire JS ecosystem beyond just Vue, right? So Vite being the primary example. And then there's Volar. Volar is the underlying framework for our IDE support, but it's actually now also being used to support other embedded languages like Astral or MDX, and JetBrains is in fact using Volar to support, trying to use that to support Angular language server as well. So cross-framework utilities, like in the on.js collection, if you've never checked it out, search for it. Has a lot of nice stuff that you can reuse. They come from the Nux team, but they are framework agnostic. And Nitro is essentially a server-side framework that allows you to more easily build a full-stack framework combined with Vite. OK, so I have only 3 minutes left, so I have to go really fast into the Vite part. So let's talk about Vite. How it started, April 2020. As I was going to bed, I just had this, it just clicked how to do hot module replacement over native ESM. And I did it, and it became Vite. OK? So this is how it's going. Vite just recently crossed 13 million weekly downloads. That is, how much is that? Like more than 15 million per month? And we have a huge ecosystem of all the tools that either is built on top of Vite or supports Vite or leverages Vite to some extent for some of its features. You probably see a lot of familiar logos here. So in perspective, we're probably now at half of Webpacks. Hopefully, we can see that gap shrink further later this year. And the philosophy of Vite is we want to build a build tool that is lean and extensible. We push for the modern web. We take a very pragmatic approach to performance, and we want to support higher-level frameworks. We want to build a collaborative, cross-framework ecosystem where everyone is trying to build something better for the web. And everyone can focus on innovations that matter instead of reinventing the wheel, because Vite has become the shared infrastructure layer for them. So if we take a look at the meta framework landscape today, so other than Next.js, everything else is either on Vite or moving to Vite. So it's a nice thing that all these different frameworks can now share a common foundation and avoid having to just reinvent the same thing over and over again. And I think that's good for stability and allows them to focus their energy on things that really matter, the differentiations that really matter, that cater to different needs. And along with the technical side, Vite has grown a very amazing cross-framework community. So this is a picture from the Vite team panel at Vue.js Amsterdam last year, also in Amsterdam, which is really cool. We have contributors from all over the world, from different frameworks. So what's next for Vite? So we want to do two things. The first is Vite internally in the current Vite release line, 5.3 and Vite 6. We want to do Environment API, which is focused on better supporting meta frameworks that we have today. And then on the other hand, we want to improving Vite from the very bottom up. We're building a native bundler called Rown on top of native JavaScript toolchain called OxC. Environment API is designed to better support frameworks that run in multiple environments: browser, Node.js, workers, and is currently experimental in Vite 6 alpha. So this is more framework author oriented, so I won't dig in too much into the details, but the idea is we are actively listening to the needs of people building on top of Vite and trying to come up with better abstractions so that all these different frameworks can reuse the same primitives to better support their high-level needs. Rown is a Rust-based bundler designed for Vite. It is created, the project is started to address a few problems in Rown. Namely, we need better dev and prod consistency, we need better production build performance, and we need better production build asset quality. So to achieve these goals, we essentially are trying to build a bundler that stands on the shoulders of giants, right? So we want the speed of VS build. We want the plugin ecosystem of Vite and Rollup. We also want the production assets control of Webpack, right? There are nice things about these existing bundlers that we want to put them together and tailored for the needs of Vite, and that is Rown. So Rown right now is in a work in progress. Milestone 1 library bundling is complete, and the next step we're working on are Vite and Rollup plugin compatibility and advanced chunk control for app-oriented output. So advanced chunk splitting and module federation in the future. OxC is the foundation Rown is built on top of. OxC author Borschen actually has another talk that's later going to be streamed remotely about OxC, but in general, it's a language toolchain for JavaScript written in Rust that includes a parser, a transformer, resolver, linter, formatter, minifier. Some of these are already done. Some of these are work in progress. For example, the transformer, we currently just finished TypeScript transforms. And then there's formatter and minifiers that's work in progress. So you might be wondering why OxC, why not build on top of SWC or Biome? We'll probably write something that's more comprehensive on the reason why we choose to build on top of OxC. But on the very high level, it has better performance. It is specifically designed to be used as components in higher level tools. So, and it's currently the fastest, most memory efficient, and most spec compliant parser. That's JavaScript parser that's written in Rust. And it has a simpler code style that makes it easier for us to understand. That's probably the main reason I picked OxC, because I just couldn't figure out how to work with some of their solutions out there. So, and our end vision for this is to have the Vite team, the Rown team, and OxC team work together to create this unified runtime agnostic toolchain for JavaScript and the web. So you can see the layer stacking here is Vite as the build tool, Rown is the supporting bundler, and OxC as the lower level language toolchain. And the meaning, the value of a unified toolchain is now we can have a consistent AST format that handles everything. So pretty much the vision that Rown was originally created for, but somehow never achieved. And I think now we have a much better chance to actually have it realized because we already have many of these parts built, and many people are already using this. And we do see a really good opportunity to build this foundation for more exciting future possibilities, right? These things don't necessarily have to be built by us. It could be built by you on top of the stack that we provide. So efficient interop between Rust and JS plugins, edge bundling, code instrumentation, build tool level, shared remote caching, advanced asset optimizations. And the reason we focus so much on performance is because you do need extreme performance to unlock the budget for you to actually do these advanced things. Otherwise, we're just focusing on getting our builds fast enough to save CI minutes, right? So join us if you're passionate about the future of JS tooling. Check out these projects on GitHub, and we welcome any form of contribution and involvement. Thank you.